All righty. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another one of my interviews. I haven't done one in quite some time, but I'm finally back from being sick, and I finally got him here. And my guest, he is a former pro wrestler. He is also a current author of two books, but one of the books that he has out is called "The Wrestling Journeyman: Life and Times of an Indie Wrestler." He has wrestled for the companies WWF, WCW, CSW, CWF, NWA, UWF, WCCW, and much, much more. He is no other than Playboy Dusty and Dale Wolfe, also known as Doink the Clown under the indie scene. So we will get him on in here and then we will start on with the interview. Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Oh, not too bad.
That's good. Well, I thank you for taking your time to do this.
Sure, thank you.
All right. Is there anything else you want to say before we start?
No, will follow you.
All right. So the first question I'll ask you is, when did you start doing wrestling? What made you want to do it?
Well, I started '82, and it was growing up. It was baseball or wrestling. I was going to do one of the two, and baseball didn't work out, so I gave wrestling. I tried. I went and knocked on doors and pestered people, and finally found a way to get trained, and that's where I started back in, like, say, '82.
Sweet. And who were some of the people that helped you get into the business, like trainer wise?
It was Ken Johnson, the same guy that trained Shawn Michaels. That was who helped me the most, especially in the beginning. And once Joe Blanchard realized I wasn't leaving anywhere, I wasn't going to go away, he started using me some more here in Southwest Championship Wrestling. In fact, he put me with Don Carson for a while, and then Kenny and I worked out with Don Carson and got some more training. And then the first person to give me any kind of break was Luke Williams here in San Antonio when he was booking here in San Antonio. And then there's been people down through the years. You don't last as long as I did. Folks giving you a little bit of a help, a little hand, or at least the opportunity along the way.
Yeah.
You don't last without that. But there's been quite a few since then. But that was the way I started.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and Ken Johnson, what was it like getting trained by him? Someone that seeing how he trained Shawn Michaels into a big star that he is now.
Well, with us, we didn't have any place to train.
Right.
We were working out on mats. We were working out where we could find a place to work out. We didn't have a ring to work out in. He had a ring with Shawn because it was Jose's deal, and it was a little difficult. I mean, when you don't touch a ring until your first night actually in the business, it's a little difficult to learn. I was more on the job training once I got the first few matches, if that makes sense. I mean, I had an idea how to maneuver around holes and whatnot, but I didn't know ring presence or anything like that. I was in the business for a little while before I started learning all that.
Right. Yeah. And watching the business growing up, who were like some of your favorite wrestlers growing up?
Well, God, the Fonks, especially Terry.
Oh yeah.
Murdoch. I liked Ricky Romero. Jose. The Blackjacks scared the hell out of me as a kid. When I was young, they scared the hell out of me. I remember them. In fact, they were probably the first ones that actually ever made you sit up and take. For me, the Blackjacks,
right?
People. Yeah. I'm trying to think. I was always a Red Bastien fan. I thought.
Oh, really? Okay.
It was tremendous. I didn't know it was working at the time, but I thought he was tremendous. I liked Billy Graham. I was one of those guys that I may not have been a heel fan, but Billy Graham, he connected. Those are the guys.
Yeah. Yeah, those are great. Terry Funk, one of the best. Billy Graham. I mean, a lot of the names that you named are great in the ring.
We took it for granted, that kind of talent in the different, territory days, because guys would be there for a little while, and except for the homesteaders, a year or two, maybe 6-8 months, whatever their deal was with the promoter. Then they would move on. And so there
Yeah.
was always, I won't say always new faces, but you had the ability to see guys that were great talents because they had to be able to move around like they did, So we got spoiled with that when growing up.
Yeah. Do you still watch the business today? If so, who are some of your favorites to keep an eye on?
No,
You know?
I have not watched a complete show in I couldn't tell you how long.
Yeah.
When I first left the business, when I first retired, I tried to watch a few shows along the way, and just I couldn't. And then
Yeah.
since then, every once in a while I'll turn one on and think I'm going to watch it, and I get 20, 30 minutes in, and I'm like, when are they going to actually do any, working in the ring? When are they actually going to do what the foundation is? I get it's a new time. I get that it's a new mentality. People want to be entertained. The backstage stuff and the promo. I get all that, but there's got to be I don't know. In my mind, there's got to be more of a balance. And
Right.
obviously, I'm wrong because they're making money. So, but it doesn't appeal to me.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. No.
Yeah, I see. Because it's like totally different from back in the day. I mean, two
Completely
totally different things. Yeah.
Completely. And like I said, I don't want to be that old guy that it's not my stuff, so it's no good. Because some of these guys are tremendous. These gals too. They're tremendous athletes. There's some of them that I have seen down through the years that in an earlier day they would have been nothing but money because they were such athletes. As long as they could work and understand the psychology, they would have just blown the roof off of places. And then there's others I've watched them, and I'm like, they would have never made a dime in the old days. But they're making money today because of the way everything's changed. And, more power to you. If you've got people that are actually making millions a year off of what's going on, something somewhere is being done correctly, regardless of whether it appeals to me or not. So.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Yep. Who would you say has been like the stiffest wrestler you've gotten in the ring with in your career?
Oh God, there's some guys on the indie scene that you wouldn't know about. They were horrible. They didn't know any different.
Yeah.
Well, there's the obvious Warrior. He was rough as could be. There were entire crews that were like that, like in Japan. The entire crew was stiff. It wasn't like it was just the lesser of the evil. That which night it was.
Yeah.
As far as the names of people go, it would have to be Warrior.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he was big. He was jacked. So, I mean,
He just didn't notice. He didn't know his own strength, and I don't think he cared half the time.
Yeah. Have you ever gone in the ring with Vader? Because I heard that he was.
No, thankfully, I've always heard the same thing, and
Yeah.
I'm glad I did. That's one I missed, and I don't regret it at all.
Yeah, that's what I would say too. I mean, a lot of guys that I've had on here told me that he was really rough with what they would call like the guys that they brought in and stuff.
I've seen it, so it doesn't hurt my heart, not at all.
Yeah. What would you consider to be a weakness and then a strength of yours in wrestling?
Oh, a weakness?
Yep.
I didn't have the greatest charisma, which that it factor's huge. Besides my size, I mean, I was only 5'11", and for years I was in the land of the giants.
Right. Yep.
I guess those would be the two, truthfully, because after a few years, I learned. I knew what I was doing. I got comfortable doing what I was doing. I got to a point where I was the one that they were sending out there to take care of people, teach them. It may not have been these tremendous burn down the house type matches, but they were solid. This is what we need you to do type things, So
yeah.
So I know I learned. If weaknesses, it would have had to been I was only 5'11" in the land of giants, and I didn't have that huge it factor, which is charisma. I didn't. You're looking back, your ego says, it wasn't that bad. And it might not have been, except I was again, with the Land of the Giants, I was also in a room full of guys with oversized amounts of charisma. So you didn't stand a chance if you didn't have strengths. I understood the psychology. I may not have created a barn burner, but I could go out there and keep the people interested, whether it was supposed to be for 4 minutes or 45 minutes. And I could listen. I knew how to, I learned. I didn't know in the beginning, but I learned how to listen to the people and build from there. And so just the idea of the mental aspect, because working in my time, mental was as much as physical ever came into play ever.
Right. For you, was it hard traveling from show to show, or what was like the best or worst thing about traveling for you?
When you're young, you don't care. You're doing what you want to do, and there's some freedom involved because you're traveling. You're not sitting at a desk, or you're not driving a forklift or something like that. So there's some definite freedom there. The best part's when you actually have some time to see some things and experience. That's the best part, learning a little bit. The drawbacks, I don't miss the wrecks. I don't miss the breakdowns. I don't miss the thunderstorms that just come out of nowhere. I don't miss being stuck in a blizzard. I don't miss being delayed for an entire day and a half in an airport, or those sorts of things. None of that I miss. I don't miss 1 second of that. Not at all.
Of course, yeah. I mean, who would, right? Those were
exactly.
The best.
That's all part of. When you're in the territories, you may not fly much, but you're driving as many as 7 days a week. I mean, literally 28, 29, 30 days a month, sometimes 2 and 3 towns in a day. When you're working for the big offices, you might be flying 11 towns in 11 days, and you're going to run into that. The weather's going to happen whether you want it to or not. The airports are going to have failures whether you want them to. Airplanes are going to break. Hopefully they're still on the ground when they break.
Yeah.
I mean, so much of the aggravation you couldn't do anything about, which I think in some ways makes it more aggravating. In some ways it doesn't, because it's completely out of your control, but I don't miss it. I just don't. I don't miss having like 3 days off and spending one of those days just getting home because of plane malfunctions and weather, or driving all night and getting home at 6 in the morning and having to start the day at 10. I don't miss that.
Of course, yeah. That's rough.
That's why we made a living.
Yeah.
We signed up for it.
Yep, that's right. Who were some of the buddies the boys that you rode with during the time in WWF, WCW days?
WWF, I rode with Martel. I rode with Lanny Poffo. A lot of times I rode by myself. But Martel, Poffo, those were 2 probably more than anybody.
Okay, yeah.
Barry Horowitz's son. Barry and I would travel some together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who would you say was your first opponent in front of a crowd, and how did you feel going into that match? Like a television.
Mongolian Stomper here in San Antonio. It was Archie Goldie, Mongolian Stomper. July of '82. I was 19 years old, and I don't remember a thing about it. I was so scared, nervous, no clue what was about to go. I mean, I'm smart to the business, or smartened up. That doesn't mean I'm smart. But I had spent all these years chasing, like that dog chasing the car. I had spent years chasing that car, and all of a sudden I caught it, and I had no idea. None. I don't remember anything about the match. Nothing. I remember going to the ring, and I remember sitting in the dressing room. I don't remember a thing about it. I'm sure it was horrible.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first match, a lot of people are nervous. So
just if you don't grow up in the business, you don't have all those connections. You don't have all that going on.
Right.
You know, I was in over my head, but you couldn't tell me any different.
Right. If you could go back in time and wrestle anyone that has passed away, who would that be?
Oh, passed away. Well, I wouldn't get in the ring again anyway, but in a perfect world, passed away. I don't know, Mariah Hennig.
Okay.
Hulk. Those would probably be the top of the list because those are the guys that could go.
Right. Who is someone you would like to wrestle, like as a rematch that you've wrestled before? Someone that you would like to get your like, revenge?
I haven't thought about any of that in so long because when I walked away, I didn't dwell on what might have been. I didn't. Not to say I don't have good memories of them. Who? I remember Rock and Roll. Ricky and Robert.
Yeah, Rock and Roll Express.
Yeah, we had some good matches.
Yeah. Those two are great. I got to see them at WrestleCon in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I know they're still going. I don't know how, but they are.
Yeah, they both are still wrestling, and then Ricky's son is. It's great. Yeah. If you could make a Survivor Series match, including you with 4 wrestlers from any era who are still alive today, who would that be?
I have no clue. And that one, that's one of those I've never even thought of. I really, honestly, I have no clue what I would do there. That one's out of my wheelhouse. I don't know. You threw me on that one. I have no clue.
Right, all right. We'll just skip it.
Okay.
Do you usually get along and become friends with most of your opponents?
I did, or tried to.
Right.
We're in there. We're giving our bodies to each other. Not just your health, but it could be your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that not everybody was going to be my friend. And I knew that not everybody was going to give a damn once I left. But while I was there, I tried to get along with everybody. I really did. Let's just say we were putting our safety in each other's hands.
That's right.
That to me was important. We got to at least get along. In my mind, we need to at least get along. And then that philosophy worked for the most part until I got towards the end. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I got a little testy, or more than likely it was people that wanted me out of the way because they figured I'd been around too long, and started having some issues there.
Yeah.
But even then, I still tried to get along with everybody. I tried.
Of course, yeah. Would you consider yourself as one of the boys, and would they have considered you as one of the boys?
Yeah, then. In fact, I was the type of guy that even when I was in New York, I knew you had pecking orders, and I knew you had cliques and whatever. None of them intimidated me because I had been with them in the territories in Kansas City and Florida, Memphis or wherever, Puerto Rico. And, so I'd already worked with them in these places, San Antonio, Dallas, you name it, Kansas City, wherever. And if I hadn't, at this point in time, they had come from someplace that was just like where I had come from and worked with the same people I had worked with. So in my mind, you may be a star, but we're still the boys. That's all there's to it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you were there for long enough that I think, of course, you definitely should have been.
Even I was of the persuasion we're all doing the same job. We're just
Yeah,
doing different levels. We're just different levels, And
of course.
even when I was younger and more wrapped up in making sure everything's right, make sure everybody's happy, and that sort of thing. I also knew that we all were wherever we were all at the whim of the guy holding the pencil.
Yeah,
So why aren't we going to try to get along?
of course. Yeah, because if you don't, that could lead to bad problems.
Cause a problem.
Yep. With not just them, but also possibly your job there. So
Yeah. I mean, there's a list of things that could happen, and like I say, not just your health, it could be your job that you feed your family with, and
yep.
just let's get along. We don't
Yep.
have to be big friends away from the building. We don't.
Right. Is there any time a fan has seen you in public and got like super surprised and or excited?
I don't know about excited. Down through the years when I was on the different TVs, whether it was Vince's TV or whether it was the local TVs for the territories, you'd be recognized.
Yeah.
I won't say I've physically been recognized since I retired, but there's been a few that recognize the name. And then they're like, was that you? Type thing. I've had it happen in my classroom a time or two, not from my students. My students aren't old enough to remember me, but I've had them my dad or my uncle said there was a guy. And I'm like, well, yeah, probably been me. That's my guess. Yeah.
Right. So you're currently a teacher?
Yeah, I'm a college professor.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Out of all the companies you have wrestled for, which one has been your most like top favorite?
Well, financially, it would have been the WWF.
Yeah.
There's just no competition there.
Yeah.
WCW came close, but the WCW didn't take care of me in the same manner that the WWF did, as far as keeping me busy or looking after me a little favor here and there that they didn't have to do. As far as the territory goes, I was always partial to Kansas City, even though they have such a bad rap. Memphis could have been perfect, except it had Jerry Lawler there. What are you gonna do? But those would be my favorite offices. Would have been WWF. I'm a hometown boy. I like Southwest as long as Joe still owned it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I don't think nothing can top WWF and WCW with all the big talent and everything like that, and just the biggest company.
Yeah, I can remember being amazed at their production values the first day I walked into the TV there for WWF, and I'm sure it's miles ahead of what it was. 35, 40, almost 40 years now. I'm sure it's miles ahead of that. And I was amazed then because I was used to like a 2-camera setup or a 3-camera setup with one big light hanging over the ring, and that's it. So that's all any of the territories had.
Right. Yep. Out of all the wrestling names and personas you've gone under, which one has been your favorite? Dusty Wolfe, Dale Wolfe, Doink, Dusty Woods.
Well, Dusty and Dale are the same guy. Dusty and Dale are the same guy.
Yeah.
So either working as myself or as Mr. Wrestling. Those would, because the Mr. Wrestling I could just pretty much be myself, but I still had the extra gimmick. And in the South, the mask still meant a little something in those days, so that made it a little easier on a man that was getting a little older. But I just preferred working as myself. I mean, my thing was making money, so a lot of times promoter wanted to call me something. I'm like, go ahead. I don't care as long as if you're signing a check, make sure you made it out to the right person, and if it's cash, make sure it's the right amount. I learned early that my ego wasn't going to feed me. I wasn't going to take care of my son.
Yeah. So. Of course. Yep. What was the reasoning behind changing your name from Dusty to Dale in WWF, WCW?
Well, Dusty Rhodes. Eddie Graham did it to me in Florida, and then Dusty did it. And Dusty coming in New York, they did it to me there. Like, you can't have 2 Dustys in the territory. And in Florida, I kind of understood because I was working as a blonde. I was working as an Hollywood Blondes with Kim Films. So I kind of see why Eddie Graham said the case, especially considering he built Florida around Dusty Rhodes all those years. So we just used my middle name. That's all that was. If we just Pat came to me and said, we can't do this. And I so badly to this day have wanted to ask him. They couldn't tell the difference between me and Dusty Rhodes. But I didn't. I just said, I've been through this once before. Just use my middle name. And that's it. It was settled with catering. It took like 5 minutes at catering. That's how long that decision took. If that long.
Oh, wow. Sweet. How did you get stuck with getting called the nickname Playboy?
I have no clue. I have no clue.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know where that started. I know a couple of the promoters used it.
Right.
And I don't know why they used it. It's been so long now. I couldn't even tell you which ones were using it anymore. Yeah, I really don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because especially on the independent scene, I might work 15, 20 times that month, but I also might work for 15 different guys. And a few ladies at that time. There weren't too many female promoters yet, but so
right.
Some of that just kind of stuck with it, or they worked together and they used it. I don't know. I really don't.
Odd, yeah. It didn't really catch with your persona that you did, really.
It was one of those things where it's like, you just again, I'm just trying to pay the bills, friend. If it makes you happy, go ahead. Yeah.
Right. What was your total reaction to getting asked to wrestle for WWF, WCW the first time?
I called them both places.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in those days, a lot of times you made your own way. They didn't always look for you. New York wasn't going to look for me anyway. WCW, they weren't going to look for me. I was way down the list. Both times, I just called the office and just talked my way in the door. A lot of business was done that way, even then.
Yeah.
Just, handshakes and phone calls.
Well, that's easy enough.
It made life easier as far as working, and if things weren't working out, leaving, that sort of thing. But there was no guarantee of anything. Nobody, if you didn't work, you didn't make a penny. So.
Yep. That's right. What is one core memory that sticks with you to this day that you'll never forget from your time from WWF?
Making Madison Square Garden, making Toronto Gardens, making Boston Gardens, places that I never thought I'd see. I knew that even if I stuck around, and before I went there, even if I went there I've been in business 5 years, so I'll start back over. I've been in business like 5 years, and I had already figured that I was probably never going to see like Madison Square Garden. I wasn't ever going to see Boston Garden. Whatever. I was going to work Memphis and Pensacola, places like that, and that was going to be whatever my career was, whether it was another year or another 10 years. So, making these places that were literally iconic type buildings, that's what stuck with me, especially considering I didn't have any family. I didn't have any connections. I made my connections. Whatever I had in this business, I helped create it myself. And here I am in these buildings. And that will always stick with me. That's kind of a point of pride.
Of course, yeah. A big moment, because not a lot of wrestlers get to say that they wrestle in the Madison Square Garden. So that's like
some guys, they do it they were on every show because they were, from there.
Yeah.
Which I get that, but I was not going to be like before I was in the business. We still had territories. Territories would send the star they were trying to make up there so they could get their garden moment. And I wasn't going to be that guy. So and then when Vince started pulling everything back and became his own self-contained company, obviously nobody's going to be, making shots for him like that. So I had already told myself none of that was ever happening, and it did. So.
Yeah. Right. If there was a WWE Hall of Fame for what they call enhancement talent, I hope you don't mind me saying that.
That's,
All right. Yeah. So for an enhancement talent, who would you put into that?
Horowitz, Lombardi, Mike Sharp, and me.
I agree.
And
Yeah.
I don't care if that makes somebody upset with saying I'm egotistical. The four of us created as many people in the time period we were there as anybody.
Right.
You might could throw Dwayne. Let me see if I can get it out. Dwayne Gill. You might be able to throw him on that list. Reno Riggins could maybe go on that list. But I was those first four names. I mean, 100%. If they ever did that, if those four aren't in there, and I include myself on that, then I don't know this legit idea. I'm being honest.
Yeah, I totally agree. And also another name I think could also possibly be on there is Mario Mancini.
Mario's a little bit before me. I mean, we overlapped a little bit.
Right.
No argument here. No argument. He was there for 2 or 3 years before me, and he was getting beat just as much or more than the rest of us were. So, I had no argument. He could go on that list. You could probably make a list of about 10 guys if we were to really sit down and hash it out from the time, say, Vince Sr. was transitioning over to Vince Jr. to 92 or 93, whenever they quit having the job matches. And 10 guys you could come up with, like SD's already in there, but guys at that level, Rods and Estrada, even though they're probably both already in there. And I don't know who's in anymore. But those guys came along a little bit before me. Truthfully, I mean, I was there. I overlapped with SD, and I know Estrada fairly well, but I never met Rods.
Yeah. Of course. Who was one wrestler you never got to get into the ring with that you wished you could have in WWF and or WCW?
WWF. I think the only guy I didn't work with besides Hogan was Andre. In fact, I'm positive the only two names I never worked with while I was there were Andre and Hogan. And I would have liked to have worked with both of them, even though I know the matches wouldn't have gone long. I know they would have been just the idea that, I'd work. Andre would probably give me more than Hogan. Because we got along well. So he would have probably done Walsh do this, or he would have probably done something for me. But there it would have been those two. As far as the Atlanta office goes, I can't think of anybody that was on top that I didn't work with. At least when I was there.
Yeah.
I really can't. I mean, like I worked with Hall, I worked with Nash, I worked with all those, I worked with all the NWO guys. I worked with Waltman. Waltman and I might have been able to have a decent match, especially if the TV cameras weren't rolling. And we could take a little time. Yeah. Because he ended up being a great hand too. I mean, it's this guy I never even think about, but he's probably the only name guy that was there when I was there that I didn't work with at some point in time.
Right. Yeah. And then Andre, that would be a great match. Definitely.
It would have been fun just to actually have this, have the ring time with Andre. That would have been fun.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Even though by the time I was around, he was slowed down and wasn't the same Andre he had been just a few years before. Just the idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there any stories of Andre that you could tell that you might have known of?
No, nothing that you haven't probably already heard. I know there was one night in Albany, New York, he had to take me to bed because I was a young kid and I'm going to keep up with Andre. And that doesn't work. You don't keep up with Andre. It just didn't happen. Yeah. I don't know anybody ever kept up with Andre as far as the drinking goes. I woke up in the luggage cart in my room inside the door in Albany one morning. I mean, and that was because I tried to stay up with Andre all night. So, I mean, I'd learned right then and there. We had the one time where we put the sheet over him in, I guess, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, one of the two. He came in the hotel lobby and everybody was coming in the hotel. Everything was shutting down. And he lays down on the couch and just hey, boss. And he goes to sleep, starts snoring on the couch. And people are like, are you going to get Andre out of here? Please tell me how you're going to do that. We just threw sheets over him and made it look like they were painting the lobby or something.
That's great.
Yeah.
During your time in WWF and WCW, did you ever get offered a contract to be signed?
I never signed a piece of paper in either one. WCW offered me one of those retainers they had. They had a deal where guys like me that weren't going to be the stars, they were paying those folks whatever they were paying per week, just to be on call. You could work anywhere else you wanted to if you wanted to, but if they gave you dates, you had to take those dates first and cancel whatever and be there. And they were going to give me one of those deals, and then I got crossways with Arn. He was an agent, and I got crossways with Arn over one of the power plant guys, and my deal never showed up. Terry Taylor promised it to me like on a Monday, and then I got crossways with Arn like that following Friday. I mean, the same week, but like Friday or Saturday. And I'm still waiting on that contract. But I never signed anything in my 6 years with WWF outside of like something for a license, or when we went to Europe, I had to sign some papers for immigration. That's all I ever signed, ever.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's sad because
I hear stories today, and it's like 10-page contracts, and we negotiate the contracts, and we go back and forth.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't know what one looked like. I would, thankfully I got an attorney for a wife, so I could give it to her. And if she didn't understand it, she's got friends that would. But I mean, I'm not getting one anyway. But I wouldn't know. I never signed a contract in 29 years in the business. I never signed a contract.
Wow, crazy. So going from the WWF locker room to the WCW locker room, what was the change like? Were there any differences that you could tell from one another?
Yeah, the WWF locker room. Well, when I got there, it was just one big group of people, and they all tried to get along. You had issues along the way. You had guys get into scrapes with each other along the way. But for the most part, they were just a bunch of guys making a decent living and living a big life. And when I left, the tension was in the air because that was when all the scandals were breaking loose and the lawsuits were breaking loose. Whatever. So, I mean, it changed. Everything changed while I was there. But in general, it was just a much looser atmosphere than it was in Atlanta.
Right.
The locker room, everybody was jockeying for positions like the old days. They were backbiting each other, backstabbing each other, and you were never sure who was in charge in WCW, which is a huge difference. That and WWF, you knew who was in charge of WWF. Like him, didn't like him, thought he was evil, thought he was great, whatever you thought about him in between, you knew that it was all in one day. It ended up at one man.
Mm-hmm.
And he had one person that he had one person that was right underneath him, which was Pat. And then Pat had a couple of people that worked for him or alongside him, but still had to, at the end of the day, answer to Pat. You knew that structure.
Yep.
And then the agents. And then there were the agents. Whereas WCW, you never were really sure who. Like I would talk to Terry Taylor. That's who got me in. WCW was Terry Taylor. And I would talk to him for a couple of months, and it was good. Then he was like, well, Orndorff's he's doing it now. So I talked to Orndorff for 3 weeks, and then he's like, well, Terry's doing it. And I'd be talking to Terry for the next 3 months. And
wow.
You didn't know. You didn't know.
Wow.
And then the higher ups, Bischoff was around, and then I don't know who took over after Bischoff because I never worked for Russo. There was somebody in between the two. You didn't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were all mixed up here and there with everybody else. I mean, they themselves probably didn't even know what
There
they
were
were
times they
doing.
did. That's why when you hear stories like the inmates ran the asylum in that place, they did, because there was nobody with the thumb on everything. And, this is the way it works, or this isn't the way. You didn't have any of that. You just didn't have it.
Yep. Was there ever a match or few that you had the chance to win during your time in WWF, WCW?
No. I think I won one. I won. In fact, I know for a fact I won one match in WWF out of about 800 or so, 800 or 1,000, something. It was a huge number. I mean, I was there for 6 years, and I wasn't full time the entire 6 years. I was full time like a year and a half, 2 years. That rest time part time, but you get the idea. There was still a large number, somewhere around 900 matches, and I won once.
That's crazy.
I remember that because it's the only one. Yeah.
Do you remember who it was against?
Joe Cruz, Toledo, Ohio. I'll remember that even when I have Alzheimer's. That is unusual.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, hey, at least you got to win a match.
I got one. So, yeah. The only people in Toledo ever saw it, but that's okay.
Yep. So for the Doink the Clown persona that you did, who came up with the idea to do that, to put you in the Doink the Clown persona, and what was it like for you being out of the 5 people getting to portray that?
Well, I didn't really do it. I just did it on a little show here and there with Vince right before I quit. And it was like, I didn't even actually work in it. I just did things like where they would have somebody run down the ring as Doink, distract people, and that's it. I didn't even get in the ring with Vince as far as the Doink gimmick. I was going to go over to Africa. And the promoter said, "Can you do the Doink gimmick?" I'm like, "I guess." I've left Vince. I know Vince is famous for suing people, but what's he gonna say to me in Africa, right? I've already quit. So, worst thing he's gonna do is tell me quit when I come back. And then when I got back, other people got word that I had the gimmick and I had done the gimmick. And after about 6-8 months of doing the gimmick in different places, I was sitting with Percy Pringle in New Orleans. He came by an independent show there, and I was talking to him. And he says, "Vince knows what you're doing. He doesn't care. You've got his permission. Just don't get arrested in the outfit. Don't do anything having stupid in the outfit. Stay off TVs, that sort of thing. You know the deal. You know the routine." I said, "Yes, I do." And he says, "Because he knows. He knows where you're at."
Right.
Wow. Okay. And so, man, he gave me. I don't want to say just blatantly here. Yes, you can do. But he sent word to me that it's okay. Just don't be stupid.
Well, there you go. That's cool.
I had made him enough. I don't want to say I'd made him money, but I had helped make him enough people that made him money down through the years that he could throw me a bone, and he did. Whatever else you want to say. Whatever else anybody wants to say about him, and it's probably true, he didn't have to throw me that bone, but he did.
Of course. Were you close with Vince? Could you go and talk to him?
I could if I wanted to.
Right.
It doesn't mean he was going to have a conversation with me.
Yeah.
He would say hello and talk to me, ask me how everything was going, and good to see you, and then find his way to whatever else it was he was doing at the moment. So, I mean, I could at least speak to him, but like I say, we weren't going to sit down and have this long, drawn-out conversation.
Yeah. So you have 4 children, and supposedly what I heard is you actually named one Dick Murdoch.
It's Grant Murdoch.
Yeah, is that true?
Grant Murdoch. Yeah.
Okay.
Little name's Murdoch. The youngest.
And you named him after him, right?
Yeah, I hear I never saw some of the things I hear about Dick. I hear about him. I don't doubt him anymore. But Dick treated me great. It was like he took care of me like a dad at times, So I probably would have had a falling out with him in modern times over some things, especially when I started asking him about some of the things I've heard. But yeah, I didn't have a dad. So, the closest thing I had was that old big ugly son of a bitch. I named the youngest one and gave him his middle name. Yeah.
Nice. So you currently have 2 books out. When did you officially release your book, The Wrestling Journeyman: Life and Times of the Indy Wrestler?
Oh, Lord, that's been about 6, 8 years now.
Right.
Oh, I want to say about 6, 8 years. Yeah. It came out, I was teaching, but I hadn't been teaching long. So probably closer to 7, 8 than 6.
Wow. What made you want to what made you just
dare.
want to decide to start writing a book?
It was a dare more than anything.
Hmm.
And it was one of those dares that hit you right square in the ego. So I did it. Part of what hit me right square in the ego is at that point, nobody had really written anything from a perspective of a guy that survived. It was always the stars.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I have a good story to tell or a bad story to tell, but I know I have a different one. So that's what I did.
Of course. Yep.
Part of it is I did. I don't know who has ever just completely cut their ties and walked away 100% ever from the business. The business is like the mafia; it keeps bringing you back. And the book was kind of a way of cutting those ties. It also allowed me to help keep walking away.
Of course. Yep. What are some things people can expect from reading your book?
Oh, I don't know. If you don't know anything about the territories, you might learn a little something about the territories. You might learn a little something about the Kansas City territory, the Florida territory. You might get an idea of what life is really like for a guy that's just trying to get by.
Right.
The constant traveling and constant hustle. It's a little different than the people that are stars. Those got contracts. They have their own hustle, but it's a different hustle, completely different.
Yep, agreed. What was it like? We mentioned this a little bit earlier. You talked about the Mr. Wrestling character. What was it like getting to play that character, and who came up with the idea to put you in that mask and
Terry
just
Taylor.
hide you to Dusty?
Terry Taylor. This was, I want to say about 94. Yeah, I'm sitting here doing the math. It was about 94. And there was an office opening up down in the Mississippi region, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas. And they actually had a pretty good little deal. They actually had some serious backers, TV. Terry tells me, I'm going to bring you in. I want to use you, but I want to use you better than just beating you off. But how am I going to do that? You spent 6 years getting beat by everybody in the wrestling business. I said, well, it's the South. Vince hadn't completely killed off the wrestling mask yet. It was close, but not completely. And I said, put me under a mask. It'll take a little time to build it on that TV, but if you're going to if you got some plan here or there to do something with me, you're going to be investing time anyway. And he says, all right. He'd already given me the dates and the towns on there. He says, all right, you're Mr. Wrestling 3. You need a black and white mask. All done. And that's how the gimmick came about.
Wow. All right. And is it true that you played the original medic persona?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Puerto Rico. I wasn't the first one to do it. That was something that they had done a time or two in the past, where they would have a guy come in, he's the original medic in Estrada, feud with Estrada. And then once the gimmick has run its course, they unmask you and you leave the island, you're done. But yeah, that was me.
Nice. What was it like getting to do that?
Puerto Rico, the first time I was down there, I wasn't ready for Puerto Rico. I didn't know it was such a different world down there. Puerto Rico could be a paradise if you didn't have to put up with Joe Vica and Carlos.
Yeah.
But you got to put up with them because they're the ones signing the checks. You go down there and you work 5 days a week. You have 2 days off. None of the towns are more than like 90 miles away from San Juan. So that part's a paradise. You're never in cold weather. You might have to worry about a hurricane, maybe. Otherwise, like I say, it could be a paradise. My first time there, every second or third week, fly to another island and work on a Tuesday. And so that week you'd work 6 days. Otherwise, you work 5 days a week.
Wow.
You had Monday and Tuesday off, and then you start your week on Wednesday. All short trips.
Wow. Well, hey, at least they were short.
Yeah, weather's hot or hotter, but like I say, you're not in any blizzards like you are in Kansas City or Minneapolis, places like that. New York,
Yep.
Once I went back, I went back 2 more times after that first trip. I knew what to expect those times, and I don't want to say it was easy work, because some nights you really did work your ass off in Puerto Rico, because of you could have some big crowds in Puerto Rico. Up until the mid-90s, she's really good. So when you're getting those crowds of 10, 15,000 people in those baseball stadiums, you had to work hard then. You didn't have any choice, but it just, you didn't beat yourself to death there like you will in other places.
Yep, that's correct, because Puerto Rico is a big wrestling community, because of the lucha libre, obviously, and Japan as well. So
I don't know anything about them anymore. I don't know if they're doing any business, if their business is dead. I don't know anything about them anymore. But as late as 93 or so, they were still capable of drawing some good houses.
Yeah. During your time in WWF, you played the heel and babyface role. What was your most favorite of doing?
I always preferred working heel.
Yeah.
Heel is just, once I learned how to work, because heel is just so much easier.
Yeah.
It really is. People don't want to love, they want to hate. You just have to find the right vibe that evening. And that's not difficult. It's really not. And then if you knew what you were doing in the ring, you could do things. I don't think you could do the same things today, but you could do things that just brought them right to you, and that you can't do as a babyface. I always prefer
I agree.
Always.
Yep. When I get into the wrestling business, because that's what I want to do, is I want to be a heel. That's what.
Well, I don't know if
today.
I don't know if a heel today could. I don't even know what a heel today would be, because there is no more. There is no more getting heat on you, because everybody knows the offices, and then you got guys like Khan that have the press conferences after the shows telling you everything they were doing and why they were doing it. I don't know how a heel could get heat and it'd be meaningful. I don't watch enough to tell you that I'm right either, but I just don't.
Right.
It doesn't click with me that everybody knows the office put that together. You're not the one that's that asshole or devious or both.
Right.
Yeah, maybe you could. I mean, but you'd have to work awful hard at it. Yeah. And you'd have to leave your gimmick outside the ring, and you wouldn't be able to go to do your press conferences with Khan. And I don't even know if the WWE office does those now. I've seen clips of Khan doing them, and I'm like, what in the hell? I guess this is the new thing.
Yeah. WWE still does the press conferences after every pay-per-view. Yeah.
They're making money, and I'm not at the wrestling business, so I'll just leave it at that. But I don't understand.
Right. Yeah.
Well, when you won, it's the same theory Vince had, but couldn't ever accomplish until he put WCW out of business, and that is make the brand bigger than the talent.
Yep, I agree. Yeah.
That's what this is the press conferences, et cetera, the brand.
Yep.
And Vince wanted to do that even when I was there. 30 some odd years ago, he wanted to be able to make it to where you came to the WWF. You didn't come to see Hogan. You didn't come see the Warrior. You didn't come see Jake or whatever. But that didn't work because the business was still built around the guys.
Yeah.
And Bischoff showed him how that could work when he opened up the power plant. But it didn't work for Vince because people still had an option. So you still had to take care of the talent, even though Vince had started moving everything to the idea of the WWF, whatever it was at the time, is more important. Once he bought out WCW, it all became about why do you think they point at the WrestleMania sign whenever they have a match for 3 weeks before WrestleMania, and when they get done, they point at the sign?
Yeah, like the Royal Rumble.
Yeah, every time somebody wins a belt, Triple H is in the photo with them.
Yep. Crazy.
It works for them. It works for them. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yep. When you won the WCCW World Heavyweight Championship, what did that moment feel like for you?
I never had Dallas's title. I had Puerto Rico's tag team title.
Okay, sorry.
We had the world tag team titles there.
Okay.
It was business. It was simply business. In fact, my deal was I walked in and I was the replacement partner for somebody that had left. So, and then we held the belts for about 4 more months. Yeah, about 4 months. It's business.
It's not bad.
It was business.
Yeah. 4 months isn't bad holding the titles. I mean, you had a great reign. So.
It didn't make me any extra money. So holding the tag belts. We were somewhere between one more added attraction and the main event. I mean, that's what your tag team champs are most times.
Mm-hmm. Yep. In NWA, you got to shortly team up with Ken Timms as the Hollywood Blondes, which we mentioned earlier. What was it like getting to team with him? And what was he
learning
like?
Experience. It was a learning experience. Kenny was like an ADHD child. I still love him. He's gone. I still love him. I miss him. But he was just one big child. So he was always into something. So it was always some kind of rib taking place. And it was never ending with him. But it was very much so a learning experience. We were in Memphis. We were in Florida. We worked up on the East Coast with Savoldi. We were together for a couple of years. And no matter where we went, we were working with good talent. And I was learning. There's no way you don't learn. Yeah, I have him in my corner, and then I'm working with guys like Ricky and Robert. I'm working with the Guerreros. I'm working with Kevin Sullivan. You go through the list of people we were working with. I had no choice but to learn.
Yep. That's right. After everything you have accomplished and done in your career, how does it feel to be deservedly inducted into the Hall of Fame, specifically the Texas Hall of Fame?
It was an honor. It was. I mean, this is home. I don't know how much I've helped anybody here, but I know I've helped a few people along the way. And anytime like that, folks take the time to recognize what you've done. It's gratifying. It really is.
Of course, yeah. I mean, just getting to say that you're part of the Hall of Fame is pretty cool. So, in your career, you have been in the ring with almost everybody from big names to small names. So, who are a few wrestlers that helped you succeed and grow more in the wrestling business during that time?
Kenny Timms, we just talked about him. I always give Martel and Tito credit for pulling me off the side and talking to me when they didn't have to. Ricky Robert working with me. Brody, Buck Robley, Rufus R. Jones, George Steele. I mean, there's a list. It was Murdoch, Funk. I couldn't give you the entire list, honestly. Those are the guys that just come to the top of my head because those are the guys that spent a little time, not just a little quick thing here, a quick thing there that stuck with you or it didn't. they were the ones that actually took some time.
Yep. Is there a funny or interesting story you could share from your travel experience with any of the boys in WWF and or WCW?
No, I mean, it was not off the top of my head. I mean, I'm sure there was always something going on.
Yeah.
Nothing I can think of, truthfully.
Right.
Or if I could, I wouldn't say it because I don't want the guilty getting in trouble. Yeah. I mean, we were that bad. We were that bad.
Wow.
I'll tell you that much. We were that bad. We were bad boys. I mean, everyone, not every one of us, but about 80-90% of us. We were. Yeah, we don't repeat. We just don't repeat sometimes.
There we go. That's a story in itself right there.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we don't have to go any further.
Some of the things you hear, some of the things that you're told, well, no, that couldn't have happened. Usually it did, and then some.
Right.
I have to be honest with you. And I wasn't as bad as some. And that's not trying to make myself feel good. I know I wasn't because I didn't end up face down in the snow getting cuffed and things like that. Right?
Yep. If you could return to the wrestling ring right now for one last retirement match, obviously you said you wouldn't, but say you would, who would you want to go up against?
I don't really know any of the talent today. I don't. And there's nobody I'd want to drag out of the mothballs that moves as slow as me. Because that would be pitiful. I mean, there's nothing more pitiful than somebody comes along and they don't have any business being in the ring and they're just too old, but they do it anyway. Right. That's part of the reason when I retired, I walked. I wasn't going to be that guy.
Right.
The only guy I have seen in the WWE that I've watched more than about 3 minutes of, that I'm in my prime, which wasn't a lot, but my prime, Gunther.
Ooh, yeah.
He's such a throwback look. And what little bit I've seen out of him, he actually works a throwback style. I don't know if I could handle him being as stiff. Well, I worked with some stiff guys too, so I mean, I probably could. But I would like to, in my prime, I would have liked to have had an opportunity to work with time machine type BS just to see if he could work. Because I have a feeling that guy could tear the place down if you.
Oh, yeah.
So we're not planning a damn thing. Just listen. I think he could. I got a feeling he could tear the place apart. And that's just based on a few little short clips here and there and just the general look that he has. Other than that, I mean, there may be somebody there that was absolutely amazing compared to him that I don't know about, which I'm not being fair to for the question, but he's the only one I know.
Right. Yeah.
But he's impressed me since that time.
Yep. I know his chops. He's a hard chopper, so.
It would only be one or two.
Yeah.
I'd pick one or two at the right time, but that'd be it.
Right.
We'd be doing something else.
Yep. So you were in attendance at the Green Bay, Wisconsin show when you went against Terry Taylor on December 14th, 1992. Do you remember any of like the Nails and Vince McMahon situation that went down?
Yeah, I was on the payphone when it happened. We all still used payphones in those days, and wherever they were in the back. And the payphone was right next to Vince's office, literally 3 feet from it. And I'm on the phone, and I hear a smash, crash. I hear some cussing going on in the room. Next thing I know, Slaughter and Lonzo go running in the room, right past me. I mean, literally just threw the papers in the air and running, and I hear more screaming, but I can't make out what's being said because I'm trying to talk to home. I'm trying to make sure everybody knows I'm okay and that they're okay. Next thing I know, they're dragging Kevin and Kelly out. Yeah, I was literally on the phone when it happened, right next to the office.
Wow. Crazy. Well, that's my Wisconsin story because I usually ask if anyone has a story from Wisconsin because being from Wisconsin here, 45 minutes from Green Bay, so
No, I worked there a little bit. I worked a few shows there, but that was it. I mean, I never really was. It wasn't like I was working for Gagne or anything.
right. So I heard previously you talked about this about the Montreal screw job in WWF. What are your thoughts and takes on the whole thing between that Brett and Sean?
I think the only person that wasn't smart and in on it was Brett.
Yeah.
I firmly believe he was the only one that wasn't in on from Sean all the way down to the cameraman. They knew what was happening. It couldn't have happened otherwise. Simple as that.
Yeah.
And then once it happened, Brett knew what was going on, but he just can't let go. Especially now.
Right. Of course. Yep.
He's too proud to make himself look like a hypocrite, even if he wasn't a hypocrite, even if he didn't completely know, even if he didn't figure it out for weeks later, a month or two later. Once he realized what was going on, he can't make himself out to be like, well, that's what it was. He can't. He was too invested then, and he's still too invested. So.
Yep.
But as far as what happened, I don't blame the office. I don't blame the office at all. You can't have, I don't care if I like Brett. I don't care if I think Brett's the greatest guy in the world. I would say the same thing to him as if I know him, but in the passing. You cannot expect the one office to allow their champion to go to the other office with the belt. You can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the oldest things in the book as far as the territories go. Brett knew.
Right.
I mean, I don't know what he expected otherwise.
Yep. Crazy story there with that whole thing.
Yeah. As I say, it was a matter of Brett had to know something was up. Yeah. Even if he wasn't smart to what would happen, even if he wasn't in on it, even if he was not a part of the work, everybody else was, and he had to know something was up. He had to know that they weren't going to let him walk away with the belt.
Right. What was it like getting to work with Iron Mike Sharp? Are the stories true of him being last in the locker room taking a shower because he was a germaphobe?
Germaphobe, 100%.
Yeah.
He got locked in the building a couple of times. Once I know for a fact, he got locked in the building. He took such a long shower. All the stories that you may have heard about him being OCD are true. Polish his boots every night. Everything in a certain order. If you move something out of order, he would lose his mind. Oh, yeah.
Wow. So I'm going to ask you, what was it like to share the ring with? And I'm going to name a wrestler and do this for a few wrestlers and just state what was it like. So what was it like to share the ring with Ric Flair?
You weren't going to get. I wasn't going to get much, but he was all pro. I mean, he was 100% professional about it and took care of business. I mean, I knew him before I worked with him, and so he probably did a little more with me than he was going to do with a few other folks. But it was just right down the middle of pro.
Right. What about Demolition Axe and Smash?
There's another couple of guys who were just pros. I knew Barry from Florida before they ever put the gimmick on him. There's nothing else to say about them. Just if they're paraprofessionals, Some of the guys, all I had was the TV match with them, and then that's just not going to be a working experience. It's really not. You've got 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 2 minutes. You don't get the full experience of working with them that you would if you were doing 10, 15, 20 or so. But in that limited time, yes, definitely just professional. They take care of you, you take care of them type thing.
Right. Just out of all your matches in WWF and WCW, who would you say was your top favorite that you got to wrestle?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. Because I didn't realize between the two, worked with just about every name that went through the wrestling business for almost a 10-year period there, including some of the greatest talents that we've ever seen. So it's hard to just pinpoint someone.
Right. What has been the funniest thing a fan has said to you before?
Oh, God, I don't know. I've been called every name in the book. And I've been called names that I didn't even know those combinations existed. It's another one. I don't know. I don't. There's not just one thing that just stands out. There's not.
Yeah. I bet there's been like people yelling stuff out from the crowd.
Oh, there's times where you have to hide your face.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, whether you have to hide your face in a turnbuckle, or you hide it in your ref, or you tell your opponent grab a hold and grab it like it because they said something that was just absolutely outrageously funny, at least in the moment. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's happened more than once. But as far as just remembering a specific incident, I don't know. Yeah. I can't think of one. Yeah.
If a movie was made about your career, who would you want to play you?
I have no idea. What's another one? I've never considered it. Wow. I don't want anybody too old, but I don't want anybody too young. You would have to have 2 or 3 people play me if you're going to play me because you started business when you're 19, and now I'm in my 60s. So, I don't even know who would resemble me enough to try to pull it off. Wow, some of these questions, they're good, but
just stumping you.
Exactly, because I've never thought of that. Oh, I'm going to make a movie out of me, and someone, like Brad Pitt should play me, or
right,
or DiCaprio should never be in. No, I never thought of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's fine. We can skip that if you want. Maybe if something comes up in your mind later, maybe just.
Yeah, I don't know that it will because I just don't know anybody that. I don't know anybody I resemble, even close.
I know now, maybe Jack Black, possibly.
I'm not that big.
No, you're not. But I didn't know he was. I didn't know he was that big.
Oh, we went. I had to go see the new movie he's in, whatever that one is. Yeah, that one. My son made me take him, and yeah, he's heavy. I'm not that heavy. I'm probably about 6 inches taller.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know he was that big.
He's huge now.
Okay.
Well, I don't know anybody I resemble, honestly.
Yeah. If you got to choose the stipulation for your match, what stipulation would you choose?
Something where I didn't have to leave my feet. I'd look like old Eddie Chic Farhot, where I'm not leaving my feet until the very finish. So it would have to be some kind of deathmatch type situation. Yeah.
You like the deathmatch stuff?
No, but I don't have to leave my feet in those either.
Yeah.
In the impossible situation that I came back to do one, I would not leave my feet.
Right.
I probably picked it up.
Yep. Which wrestler has given you the best advice and or a compliment?
That's another one of those. There's so many. Because like I said, I have guys like Tito or Martel or Murdoch or Rufus R. Jones, Harley, guys like that. Funk that sits you down and don't do this. Eddie Graham, I worked for him. Don't do this, but figure out why you want it. That sort of thing. Why you want to do that. Just the list is endless. You don't realize I had like 4,000 matches in my career.
Yeah.
And the amount of time I spent in towns and with guys, whatever. like I said, that list is endless. There was times where I got great advice riding in the car with somebody that I didn't even realize I was getting advice at the moment until something later happened, and then you realize that's what he was talking about.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's right. Have you ever witnessed, or has it ever personally happened to you where a fan came out of the crowd and tried to attack you or opponent or whatever?
A few times. Usually overseas. Like I've had it happen a few times in South Africa, had it happen in Singapore, had it happen in Malaysia. Actually had it happen outside New Orleans one time. I mean, it's happened a few times. It happens. I don't know if it happens in the States anymore, but overseas, there's still a few dangerous places. Or there were.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be scary in the moment. I mean,
I don't think I get that kind of heat anymore. So,
if you could have any band or singer perform your theme song, who would you want that to be?
I don't know. Because I always had that Murdoch mentality. I didn't come to dance. I don't need music.
Yeah.
My thing was let music work for the guys. That, if everybody has music, it doesn't mean anything. Which now everybody has music. Well, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What is your least favorite move to receive?
Oh hell! Anything where you ended up landing, flipping backwards, or landing on your face, anything of that nature, because there's just no way to protect yourself doing those type situations. And so you can go through the list, and if it has you flipping backwards or if it has you landing on your face, I didn't want to take it.
Yep, you could bust your face open easily.
Easily, yeah.
Yeah.
If you're flipping backwards, you don't quite make the turn. You break your neck.
Yeah, that would be bad. Yeah.
Like the Road Warriors thing off the Doomsday or whatever they called it, off the shoulders, and I refused to take that. That's the only time I ever refused to take anything in Vince's. And they were like, and they actually asked me, do you mind? And I said, if I can avoid that, please let me. And you've been here long enough. Don't worry about it. And they went to the next guy.
Wow. I can't believe they let him do that move, because I've seen there's this one popular one going around where this enhancement talent that they did it to, and it was so crazy. It looked like he broke his neck, but he didn't.
So that was the thing that bothered me, is even if I know what I'm doing, and I do, what if I over-rotate a little bit, or what if Hawk throws me just a little too hard, or what, not paying attention, or Animal catches me a little bit stiffer than usual. I wasn't taking that one. But that was any move like that. If it was like a backwards flip, no, I wasn't doing it.
Yeah. That's how the current WWE wrestler Big E got injured, because I think he got suplexed and hit his neck.
It's too easy.
Yep. Out of all the venues you've got to wrestle at, which one has been your favorite? I'm guessing the Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, the Garden.
Yeah, nothing could top that.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever gotten embarrassed or during a wrestling match due to a mistake or anything that happened?
Oh, I'm sure I did, especially when I was learning. Until I realized, unless it's just a glaring mistake, nobody knows except the guys in the ring.
Right.
That takes a little bit of learning. It takes a little bit of education. Yeah, I'm sure there was times that it happened, especially like I said, when I was learning, especially when I was green and wanted to do right, and I wanted everything to be perfect. And, but as far as just something that's happening in a moment and embarrassment, I'm like, no. Nothing like that. Yeah.
Well, that's good. Yeah. What would you say has been the most dangerous scenario that you've got caught in your wrestling career?
Been in a couple of buildings where, like, we were in Malaysia, they set the building on fire to try to get to us.
Oh.
They tried to get us to come out of the dressing room. Oh, we were Singapore. It was Malaysia, Singapore. Set the building on fire, tried to get to us. We've had crowds rush the bus. It was in Malaysia where they rushed the bus. The crowds rushed the bus, and you had to drive through them. And, things like that. I've had a few things like that happen. Yeah. Had the building set on fire.
Wow.
Had them chase the bus. Rush. A big crowd rushed the bus. I think those were probably two of the worst. You had other instances where you had to fight your way out of a building, or you had to knock somebody out to get past to the dressing room door, but nothing to where it was literally they're rioting and they're setting the building on fire because they know eventually you're going to have to leave.
Yeah.
Fire. Yeah.
How did they catch that the building was on fire?
They just set the building on fire. The fans did. And thankfully, the fire department got there quickly and got it out, and they used the ambulances to get us out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Scary situation there.
Yeah. Especially on the other side of the world.
Yep. What would you say has been the worst injury you've gotten in your career?
I don't know. Mine, when they happened, I could always work through most of them, tore up a knee, that sort of thing. My injuries have all been what happened to me later. Does that make sense? Age and deterioration or whatever. I've had to have like 6 surgeries, hip replacement, knee replacement, my neck's been rebuilt, that sort of thing.
Wow. Yeah.
As far as during the time I was in business, I never had to stop for surgery. There were times where I was hurt, but I just didn't stop.
Yeah, so you had to kind of get into stuff that from later or from earlier in the business that got to you now. Yep. What are 4 words you would describe your wrestling persona, Dusty Wolfe?
Competent, capable. That's about it. I don't know if there's 2 more to go in it, because to me that was all that mattered. You were capable and competent to do what was asked of you. So.
Yep. What are 3 things that annoy you the most about wrestling?
When I was still around, lack of honesty with some people. Just tell me you're not going to use me, or tell me you're done with me. Just be honest with me. Just tell me straight up. That lack of honesty. The backstabbing that would go on between the guys over paydays that just weren't that much different. And then either just the actual traveling itself. Yeah, that's probably the 3. Because the traveling got tired after a while.
Oh, yeah, I bet. Because you got the first couple times was probably fun. And then, of course, like you said, got definitely tiring and boring after doing it for so many times and probably with the same people. And
it's part of the business. It's just part of the job. Yeah. And sometimes you don't want to do that part of the job. Yeah.
But you're getting paid for it, so.
Exactly.
If you could have wrestled anywhere in the world that you never got to in your career, where would that have been?
Australia is the only place left.
Okay. So you've wrestled in Japan?
Yeah.
Nice. What was it like? What are like the wrestling fans down there like?
They're pretty chill until they see something they like, or they're pretty chill until they see something they want to react to, and then they're like here. But getting them to that point can be rough.
What got you prepped and ready to go for a wrestling match that you had later in that night, what did your like
Just warm up a bit
meal
and
prep
go.
look like?
Just warm up a little bit and go. Stretch a little bit and go. That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
So did you have to eat like a certain meal? Were you the type of guy that eat certain foods or healthy or anything?
No. It was work. It was work.
If you could go back in time and tell your younger self something motivational towards being a wrestler and to what you are today, what would that be?
I don't know that there was anything to change. I mean, I did pretty much what I wanted to do. I did it pretty much my way. So I don't know there's anything to change.
Right. Yeah. Maybe win a world title in WWF.
Well, if you paid me more, if you didn't pay me more, it didn't matter to me. That's why I did all those jobs. They were paying me.
Right. If you could go back and revisit any year of your wrestling career, what year would that be?
Been in the 80s, 90s, somewhere between the mid 80s, mid 90s. That was a pretty good run there.
If you came with a warning label, what would it say?
Wow. I don't know about that one either. I really don't. Some of these I have no clue.
Yeah. Stumping questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because things I never thought of. I never even considered them. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people say my questions are like different. If there is anything you would or could have changed about your wrestling style or persona or anything, what would that have been?
Some figured out a way to connect with the fans more.
Right.
Whatever that might have been, I couldn't tell you, but that would have been the goal.
Of course. Growing up, were you more of like a shy, quiet kid or outgoing, loud, and excited?
Shy. Yeah, I was more shy.
Yeah. Well, since you said you were more shy, what was it like for you knowing that when you getting older that you wanted to become a wrestler? What was it like for you now knowing that you had to perform in front of these large crowds? And
I realized it wasn't that. At the beginning, it was a little rough, but after a while, I realized it was just what it was. It was performing whatever it is you wanted to do.
Of course, yep. Now, to finish off the interview with a couple more questions, what is one thing you would tell your wrestling fans that have been following you?
I don't know if anybody's followed me, but I appreciate them if they do.
Yeah.
That is gratifying. People remember you all these years later. So.
Nice, yeah. And then for the final question, this is a question that I ask everybody, is do you have any advice for me to become a wrestler?
Don't. I mean, unless you have a connection to one of the big offices, don't. Because there's no real money. I see what guys are doing. I hear them talking, and they're not getting any paydays. And you're tearing up your body. You take a chance of completely wrecking something forever. If you got a connection to one of the offices that can make you some money, then go for it. Otherwise, if you're going to just be that guy that a lot of us were, including me, they're going to do it anyway. Find the best talented trainer you can find and go from there. Because they're not going to create a worker out of you, but they can get you ready.
Right. Yeah, totally agree. Thank you. And I thank you for taking the time out to do this interview. It was a pleasure to have you on here. Is there any last words that you want to say, or just anywhere that anybody can find you?
You stumped me on a couple. Well, I'm on Facebook on occasion. You know, I have that. I have Twitter or X or whatever Musk is calling it nowadays. You can find me there. Otherwise, you know, like I said, those that do remember, I appreciate them. I really do appreciate the idea that maybe they enjoyed something, even if it's for a few minutes. You know, not everybody can say they did that. So,
Right.
Hopefully those memories are good ones. So,
of course. Well, again, I thank you, and I hope you have a good rest of your night.
All right, you too.
See ya.
All right.